What is up? Happy Friday. Welcome to the first episode of Extra Brains. I am one of your hosts, djWHEAT, joined, of course, as always, by Anna Prosser. It's been a while since I've been able to say that, Anna, but I truly am so excited to be back on the airwaves with you. And
hearing you say welcome, happy Friday, I did not know how much my heart needed that. That was so, yeah. And welcome to all of you who may have watched us before on Twitch Weekly. We've missed seeing you every Friday. Thanks for coming back around, and we hope you enjoy this new show.
Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about what the show is. We're going to do a few things differently in this first episode, obviously, because we have to kind of set it up. But I want to, before we do that, give a heartfelt thanks to Britt Wiseman, who is in the shadows right now as one of our producer who has been along with us on the ride the entire way. And Anna, I kind of feel like I'd love for you to tell the story about where Extra Brains came from.
Sure. Well, Marcus and I have been working together for a long time. If you don't know both of us, we worked together at Twitch for almost 5 years through Twitch Studios and creator development and all of that. Prior to that, we had been friends and colleagues in esports, both of us working in esports tournaments and things like that. And some of the most fun we ever had was producing our own content and co-hosting content. And we've been co-hosting stuff together weekly or more for so long that we feel like we make a really good team. So when I left Twitch in March, I was trying to focus on making some more content. Marcus and I missed hosting together. So we started thinking about what is something that we could bring that would be of value to the community, because we don't want to just make content for the sake of content. We want to make content that will have meaning and will help people. And for both Marcus and I, one of the most fulfilling things we've done is providing resources and workshops and education and things for streamers and for anyone in our lives who has need of an extra brain, someone to just like bounce things off of or ask them questions or offer them ideas. And so in that vein, we thought, well, what if we offer our brains to the service of our Twitch communities? And how do we do that in a way that's engaging and that we can make everyone feel welcome and just put ourselves out there and hope that we can help in a fun way? So that's where Extra Brains came from. And what we hope it will become, like Marcus said, we're going to do some different things this first episode just to kind of orient everybody and introduce ourselves and everything. But eventually we hope you'll submit your questions, topics, things that you would like help thinking about. And then we'll spend a lot of time discussing them. Marcus and I may have different opinions on those things, which is going to be fun. And we hope we can help.
It might be fun. Yeah, you're right.
It might be fun.
It will. I know it will be. And, you know, I already see a couple folks. What's up, Mob Lord? We definitely, miss Twitch Weekly a lot, getting together with the community every week. And although it is different, it's great to finally be back on the airwaves on a Friday, a nice way to end the week every week, hopefully. And, someone asked me today, oh, cool, how many episodes is Extra Brains going to be? And my answer was like,
infinity.
Hopefully infinity, right? I mean, that's how you kind of launch a show. But yeah, I was excited about this, also personally, because having been able to work with both Anna and Britt for a very long time, both out of Twitch and then obviously in Twitch, they too have so many times been my extra brain in so many situations. And, I think when we were kind of talking about the show and we finally landed on, a brainstorming talk show, it just made a ton of sense to all of us, because everything that we tackle, it usually starts with, all right, let's just throw out all of the options and then figure out what's realistic and then chew on each of those things and figure, and that process has not only been incredibly rewarding because, it's a fun, creative process. And sometimes those problems are tougher, but there's been so many times where I've come to you and I've come to Britt and I've literally said, I need your help. I need your brain power. So I'm just so happy that Extra Brains kind of represents how we have also supported each other as teammates and as friends. And like you said, I hope that we get to extend that a little bit to, our our close circles. I'm excited that we are streaming both on my channel as well as your channel as well. So hello to Anna Prosser's community who's watching over on chat.
Yeah, and speaking of Brit too, if you see Cheer Hex in chat, that is her. Show her the respect she is due. She is the reason that this is happening. She is our safe protector behind the scenes, and she will also be the person who, when we ask for feedback from chat or when we're choosing questions, she will be choosing them. So it will behoove you to treat her kindly and wonderfully, as she deserves.
Yes, it's absolutely true.
She says, yeah, respect me, please, in chat.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what our format is for today and then kind of how that might, shift and change a little bit in the future?
Yeah. So today we wanted to spend a lot of time, this seems weird to say, but a lot of time talking about ourselves. And the reason we wanted to do that is because we don't want to position ourselves as experts on everything, because we're not. And we hope that by explaining a lot about our background and where we come from and what our experiences are, that can help you come up with things that you would like to talk to us about. It might give you some ideas of our background and limitations. So when you're asking someone's advice, knowing where they're coming from and why they're saying what they're saying can be helpful. And so we're going to spend quite a bit of time doing that. Then we're going to answer one question that we have already gotten in this time. It's kind of a question that we hope will be relevant to everybody.
Pretty relevant.
We'll discuss that for a while. And then we will have some live Q&A. So we'll have the opportunity for you to submit topics and questions in chat. We'll do that for a little while. And then we'll tell you a lot more about how you can participate in the future, how you can submit questions for future shows, and then we'll be done for the day.
Yeah. And one of the other things that obviously when we said from the beginning we want to stream to both of our channels, we also wanted to make sure that participation, regardless of whether you're in my chat or whether in Anna's chat. So when we do get the point of Q&A, we've got it set up. We're going to use featured chat as a really easy way to let you submit questions via chat. And then our lovely producer, Britt, will just be able to put those up regardless of whether they came from my channel or Anna's channel. And so hopefully we will get all of the conversation going and cross the streams a little bit, even though the Ghostbusters said not to do that. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
The other thing that's worth mentioning is if you are a sub to either djWHEAT or my channel, we do have some new emotes. Our mascot, Edie, down there, the little brain that you see, is available in certain forms on each of our channels. So if you'd like to emote using EB, we welcome you to do that. Then thanks for being subs. You guys are great.
We already got a question, Anna, and I'm just going to throw it out there and ask because I have a feeling.
This isn't question time.
I know, but Dreamless from my channel asked, are you planning on doing any voice calls? And I think the answer to that is not today. And we're going to, we want to work out the bugs. Actually, I was telling Anna and Britt that like I had a little bit of nerves, but not necessarily because the show. I mean, Anna's a great co-host and Britt's an awesome producer. Like I'm not worried about the show, but doing all the technical work from behind, it's been a while. Like Live on 3 and Inside the Game, that was the last time. So we're gonna kind of build the show as we continue to go and add elements to it that I think a lot of community members will not be surprised that myself or Anna would add to it. But for today, no, maybe in the future for sure. We ready to introduce?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Why don't you start, Marcus? Tell us, let's take it in sections. Tell us about your family background to mix it up. Because usually we're always doing career background first.
Yeah. So I love talking about my family background because I felt like as I've gotten older, Anna, I've started to realize that, I got to have a really kind of unique upbringing. And I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. I have a older brother and a younger brother. Lived in Omaha pretty much my whole life. But I was born actually in Boys Town, Nebraska. And Boys Town, Nebraska is a small village, a square mile by square mile in Omaha, Nebraska. It has its own zip code. It's technically, its own thing. But the whole purpose of Boys Town is it's a village in which boys and girls from around the world who may not have families or may have had, like behavioral problems, they would come to kind of have a family structure in these large homes in Boys Town. And my parents were what they called family teachers. So they were the live-in parents for about 8 boys at any given time. So my family unit was my mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, and then 8 additional brothers all the time. And, one of the things that I am really thankful for that is that not only were my parents, their job was to be parents. And so as parents, they were pretty good at it. I learned a lot from them. But what was so incredible that, again, I look back on now and I just say, wow, that's so cool, is that having 8 brothers that came from all around the United States, I was subjected to so much different music and cultures and diversity that, growing up, I would have not probably had that same level in a place like, Omaha, Nebraska. So I look back on that, and it's just like, it's something that I look back on quite fondly. But I was the middle child. I was kind of a troubled child. My family was mostly a sports family, and I was the one that wanted to be playing video games and on the computer all day. So I wouldn't necessarily call myself the black sheep. It helped out a lot. Every time that my dad needed gymnastics notes written up, or my mom wanted a spreadsheet filled out, they came to me, earned a little money that way, learned some work ethic that way. But that's kind of my family. As I say, so I'm still very close to my family. As a result of having all those brothers for so long, I actually have 2 adopted brothers now, both older than me. We still keep in touch. And there you go. That's my first part.
Yeah, and your current family that lives in your house is really important to you too.
Yes, of course. Thank you. As Jen's up there, like, all right, we're gonna. I've been married now for 16 years. Sorry, just want to make sure I got that right.
Wow.
But the reason I have to think about it, there's an important reason why I have to think about it, Anna, is because I've been with Jen for over 20 years. Right. So I'm getting to that point in my life where I will have, Jen and I will have been together longer than we haven't been together. I find that really special, but we kind of feel like we've been married for over 20 years, but actually 16 years. We have a 15-year-old son. His name is James. We call him Mini Wheat. He is a joy and the exact opposite of me as I was growing up, where I was the troublemaker. He is the perfect little angel most of the time. And yes, you are right. They are very important to me. Everything that I do, I definitely do for them. And of course, my perspective on that has changed a lot as I've gotten older.
Mm. Well, my background, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and my family consisted of my father and mother and 1 younger brother who's 2 years younger than me. So I grew up in a fairly small, but like very average family. I, as a kid, was not a trouble child. I was kind of the opposite.
No.
Yeah. Almost, I'm learning in my adulthood, maybe almost to a fault, but very much like into academics. I was valedictorian. I was a church youth group leader. I was a musician band member in my church. And I did a lot of performing, like, plays and musicals and singing. And I was a huge choir nerd, huge choir nerd. I was singer of the year for Cleveland High School in 2003. Very, very important achievement. And grew up in Portland. Then my parents divorced when I was 22. And then my mom remarried fairly quickly and remarried a family friend. So I knew all of their kids. So now there are 4 of them. So then I had 5 siblings, and then now almost all of them are married. So I now have somewhere around like 11 siblings. So family gatherings went from like teeny tiny to giant. Huge. And lots of people my age. They're all my age, and some of them have children too. So now a very, very large, boisterous young adult family. And I'm also really, really close to my extended family, like my grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles. So I'm really blessed. I'm learning to have a very, very big family. I was married. Many of you probably knew that. And unfortunately was in the midst of a divorce when my husband passed away. So it's something that I don't talk about very much. I can't guarantee that I will talk about it very much, but most of you already know that. So that's my family situation. I don't have any children, but I really,
Human
really
children.
love my dogs. I say dogs because my dog of, well, I had her 13 years. She was 14 years old. She recently passed away. A lot of you know Poa. But I am adopting a new dog, and it's all I want to talk about. So,
This is true.
yeah.
This
So
is
that's my
true.
family background. Should we talk about I'm thinking career and also like where we've lived, where we've gone, like travels and things. I don't know, maybe are those two separate
I
things,
mean, for
Marcus?
me, they kind of overlap because I think I was so confined to, Omaha, Nebraska for a very long time. It wasn't until esports and gaming. I mean, we had the, family vacation over to Iowa, like we went 4 hours away, Lake Okoboji, go. But it wasn't really until gaming and esports started to kind of pick up for me. So they're very much intertwined, Anna. Right, like my first cross country trip was in a car with four of my Quake 3 teammates to drive to New York City. Was the first time visiting New York City. Was the first time driving in New York City. Wouldn't recommend that. And it was kind of our first time ever traveling 24 hours to go play in a video game competition. But yeah, my career is out of high school. I was actually hired with a computer company because of Y2K was happening. And if you didn't know, like
I love
people
that.
were like, oh my God, everything is going to just explode and it's going to be bad. So what happened is the 2 years before Y2K is IT departments were like, we don't have enough people that know what is going on. And so believe it or not, there was this massive, huge, just explosion, this demand needed for people who had computer skills. Well, remember I told you I didn't play sports. Instead, I played computers. It positioned me really nicely to say, hey, I know how to do all this stuff. So I got hired by a company. I worked for this company for over the course of 9 years, not consecutively, but because at the same time, Anna, I was kind of following the esports path, the gaming path. That was an interesting time for me. I was starting my own first businesses. I was learning how to do my own content. I was figuring out how to, mess with the technology on the internet. But that led me to Los Angeles, where I worked for a company called GGL and eventually appeared on a DirecTV show for 3 seasons called Championship Gaming Series. And, well, that didn't work out so well. So I came back to Nebraska. I started over. Lo and behold, a little service called Justin TV and Twitch came around, and I started over and made content again. Eventually was hired by Twitch, and during that time, kind of parallel with my esports career. So I just want to I want to say real quickly, and then shoot it to you. A lot of people know that part of my history. The part of the history that I probably don't get to talk about as much is my IT part, that 9 years that I spent, because it really helped me in everything else that I did. I had a manager, her name was Dale Wickizer, and she was the one that taught me to be a manager. She was the one that taught me how to deal with things like corporate politics and sort of the way that, you need to conduct yourself. And you probably know this, and anyone who watches my stream, I'm a very passionate person. I like to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I feel your feelings. Like I love emotion. She was the one who kind of helped me go, Marcus, let's show you what's appropriate emotion in a meeting and what's not, and I thank her so much for that. That job, I literally went from someone answering phone calls for banks, which I love to do. I love to help customers. It was like my favorite thing. And to me, it was a contest. Like, how many tickets can I close? How many problems can I solve with all of our banks? And, I eventually became to then manage that team and then managed another team that did like cloud server backups. So I had a lot of corporate experience as I went into the esports and the gaming world. And that's kind of my career summary. How about you?
Travel is hard to lump in with career for me, but it kind of makes sense. So my first job was as a lifeguard and swim instructor for the city of Portland. I did that for 9 years or so. So lots of different roles: swim instructor, lead swim instructor, swim coach, blah, 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 blah. So I'm very passionate about lifeguarding, which is a strange thing that people sometimes don't know about me. And at the end of that, my manager, who I had worked for a really long time and trusted me, and one of my closest friends, was like, hey, I have a friend who's opening a water park in Dubai. They want experienced lifeguards to come help them train.
This is crazy.
Do you want to go? And I was like, well, when? And they were like, next Wednesday. And I went. I had just finished college. I was kind of like looking for the next thing, didn't want to tie myself down right away. So I went off to Dubai with one of my best friends. I lived there for about 3 months. The experiences I had there would take an entire show to talk about, but I had a lot of experiences learning about how to look beyond what you normally see as maybe a tourist or things. I worked at this water park that was lavish and huge, but I worked with a lot of people who were impoverished and almost in a situation of indentured servitude. So there was one point where I stood on a table and raised my fist for our workers' rights and led a mini revolt. So it was a very exciting time in my life. I learned a lot. I came home and I continued working in aquatics for a little while, but eventually started working at a financial firm as a recruiter. So I didn't do anything with money. I don't really like talking about money, but I love talking to people and talking about what they're going to do. So I enjoyed recruiting a lot, but I quit that job when I became Miss Oregon USA. And the reason that I did that was because my goal career-wise was, I know I love performing. I feel like it's my way of connecting to people and making a difference. So if I had my dream job, it would be like a goodwill ambassador for the UN who's working in service and is doing that because they're somebody who's a successful Broadway and film actress and singer. That's the dream job. And I knew I would never get to there, but I thought if I go one step toward that, then that can be my guiding star. Like every time I make a career move, I'll go one step toward that. So I was Miss Oregon USA, and at the same time started getting involved with Team Evil Geniuses in esports, doing on-camera work for them and doing interviews and things. I was also doing interview consulting, helping people learn how to be interviewed and coaching them on that as my own business.
And that was actually, that was like kind of a byproduct of what you did in pageants, right?
Yeah, because I was consistently winning interview awards in pageants. So mostly pageant girls were coming to me and being like, how do I do that? And I think we should talk about education later, because that is very much related to my education. But
Sure.
Got involved with Team Evil Geniuses, started working in their creative. And by working in their creative, I mean running around the Evil Geniuses team house with a camera, because I was so convinced that making video content was important, even though nobody wanted me to do it. And then
look at it now.
Yeah. And then over time ended up becoming a producer for them. They became Good Game Agency. Good Game Agency was acquired by Twitch after Twitch was acquired by Amazon. So that's what brought me to Twitch. And then Marcus recruited me off the Good Game team to join him on Twitch Studios, which was the best decision ever.
I had to fight for it, though. I believe it or not. I had to fight Anna, actually. I had to,
There was a meeting. Here's an old Twitch story. Twitch had tons of meeting rooms, but they were always booked. It was really hard to find a meeting room as the company grew. And there was one room that was a nap room, specifically set aside for like, if you needed to rest during the workday, you could book this room and take naps there, which is pretty amazing. But that was the only room that was available, and you weren't supposed to book that for meetings. But Marcus was like, fuck it, we're gonna have a meeting. And he like booked. And so I was sitting next to this like bunny lamp that was like a dimmable, sweet, like nap time lamp. And Marcus was sitting on this box that had blankets in it. And he was like, just selling me this job about how like, look, if you want to go into sales, sure, you'll make lots of money, but you won't feel that passion. You won't feel that meaning. And I was like, you're right, Marcus, and ended up coming onto the team. So we worked together for quite some time. I was lead producer for Twitch Studios. And then when Marcus moved to creator development, I moved to become managing producer of creator development. So all of that is to say, I continued to stay focused on wanting to tell stories, wanting to inspire people and serve people by connecting people. And I neglected probably the biggest part of my career that I'm most proud of, which is that around the same time as Miss Oregon USA and Evil Geniuses, that's when I started working on camera as a host and interviewer. And that's probably what I love doing most, hence me being here hosting a show. And that's, I had kind of those two parallel jobs until I left Twitch in March.
Now, before we move on, it might be helpful to just say, okay, we just talked a little bit about family. We just talked a little bit about our careers, right? Maybe for you to talk a little bit about if I was watching the show and I was thinking about something I'd love to brainstorm about, like what are some of the key areas, that you feel like you lend expertise to, if that makes sense.
That's a really good question. I just realized I forgot so many places that I've traveled.
Well, I mean, that's a list that you've probably, so long. I think the point being is that, right, as far as both of us are concerned, like I could give you 10 million travel trips and I bet you have 10,000,005 because I'm sure that even men and women travel a little bit differently. I don't know. I'm like, I've got to have like all of my, comic books and these things to entertain me every step in the way and make sure I have these and the chargers and whatever. But that's one thing that people could ask about. What else?
Well, I guess it kind of fits into what you were talking about, where I have expertise, and that speaks to education as well. My degrees, I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in international studies and one in speech communication, and a minor in Spanish. So speaking of travel, I lived for a while in Spain in order to get my Spanish minor when I was studying abroad. And international studies, as well as that trip to Dubai, eventually led me to India to do some volunteering there as well with Mother Teresa's organization. So I mentioned those because, Marcus is right. We've traveled tons of places, but those are more experiential. Like I have studied abroad, I have volunteered abroad, those kinds of things I could offer some insight on. And primarily in terms of my expertise, I think I can offer a lot of expertise in communication and most specifically how to interpersonally or group communicate. I think those are probably my foremost skills. My emphasis in speech communication was rhetoric, and rhetoric just means how you it's really hard to define rhetoric. That's funny. Most simply, it's how you describe and try to convince people of things. I guess someone's going to call me out on that and be like, that's not rhetoric, Anna, you're not a real rhetorician, and that's fine.
Well, I could say from experience, there's been many times where I've said, hey, Anna, will you review this email? Or I need to have this conversation with this individual, like, how do you think about the conversation? Here's how I'm thinking about, right, having the conversation. You've given me a lot of insight, throughout the years, especially from the email, we talk a lot about that, but the 24-hour rule has saved, many of us, many times. So,
people don't realize that communication is actually a science. Like a lot of these books down here are communication theory books where there are actually theories and sciences behind how you talk to someone and how effective certain ways of talking to someone will be. So I geek out hard about that, hence still having all my textbooks. So that, and then specifically that evolving into interview, I think I geek out the most about how an interview is conducted and how to make it the most effective, both from an interviewer and an interviewee perspective. And I think expertise wise, I would also claim, this is like getting deep into Annaville, but like, I have been hesitant to claim creative storytelling as an expertise of mine because, it's one of those things that's hard to claim and a lot of imposter syndrome around it, but I would hope that that's also one of my expertises.
Yeah.
Marcus, I've used you as a sounding board for so many emails as well, and a million of those similar, like, how do I strategize around like how to navigate a professional environment and all of that? What would you say are your expertise?
Especially from a family perspective, I kind of feel like I've run through so many experiences, not only with my own family as a parent, but also kind of being a crappy kid growing up, definitely gave my parent. But, relationships with brothers, sisters, aunts. My mom has 5 sisters, and they didn't always get along. And some years they're talking to each other, and other years they're not. So, definitely from a family perspective, I would by no means ever say I'm an expert, but I do feel like I've been in so many kind of situational moments involving family that it's something that I love to sort of help talk with people about and whatnot. But from a career perspective, Anna, I think that individuals who are emotional, are like myself, are very, very passionate, oftentimes can be the most misunderstood in a job, right? Some individuals will say, like, here's my job. I go in, I clock in at 8, I clock out at 5, and kind of that's it. That's not necessarily how I look at a job. I kind of feel like you're never quite clocked out. But from that perspective, there's so much that comes into play: work-life balance, dealing with a incredibly corporate environment if you are this sort of personality type, and then also sort of the personal and interpersonal relationships that do kind of form and happen in the workplace. It is so hard. Like I have been working in sort of a corporate environment for, almost 20 plus years of my life. And I don't think it's ever something that I would truly master. I don't know that anyone ever masters that, but it also is really important to me as a manager. I'm the type of manager that really feels like, you have to connect with your employees, and that's the best way that you can be a manager. So that's another area that I feel, very confident, just kind of like talking with folks about how I would approach something with a manager, or if a manager approached you with something, how that might play into what you might say, what you might do, how you might remedy a situation, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. I guess another important facet that we could talk about, because we've kind of talked about education, career, family. One thing I know you are super passionate about is community.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, maybe we should talk about, I think we may go too far if we say, like, what does community mean to you? Because we can talk about that for a long time. But maybe what ways do you engage with your community online? And then what ways do you engage with your community IRL, like the place where you live and things like that?
Yeah, I mean that's great, and it's a tough question to answer, obviously in the pandemic, because there's not as much in-person community building, and there is a lot of virtual and online community building. We might be talking a little bit more about that in a little bit, but to that point, when I was getting involved with computers at a very early age, one of the first things that truly had me falling in love with computers was something called a BBS, a bulletin board system. And the idea is that you dialed a telephone number with your computer, and then you would gain access to, right, a BBS. Now, the way this worked, Anna, is that, like, I would say, oh, I'm going to send Anna a message. So I would send you a message, and then I would have to log off, and you would have to log in order to get that message. Or if you used a different BBS because maybe you lived in, right, Portland, then every night those email messages or messages would then get sent to like a FidoNet that would send it out to all of the other BBSs, right? So very early on, I was kind of learning about community building in these sort of smaller electronic ways. And there's so many communities that I became a member of early on. So to me, like online community building is like one of my favorite things. I mean, I think if anyone has ever watched Twitch Weekly or knows me at all, realizes why I care so much about that. Because from, the early days of the BBSs to like the college community online, to epileptic gaming, to Live on 3 and the esports community, to the Twitch community, like this has just been something that has been with me my entire life. So I care about community. I love to talk a lot about community. I do. There's actually 2 books that were written by Charles Vogel about community. And both books are heavily based on not only his philosophies, but a lot of the philosophies that I built over many years in regards to community. And so, Anna, I'll be honest with you, like my expertise is probably with online communities more than it is with in-person communities. My in-person community more feels like that large extended family. Get together on nights, celebrate birthdays together, that sort of a thing. But me, like I don't mind being behind the desk and behind the screen a lot. So it's probably an area that I could actually improve in.
Well, I'm also curious. I'm thinking about kind of what parts of myself do I share with who, and what do I do in all of those communities. So I know that you kind of tend to be very hard on your sleeve.
Yes.
In general, would you say that's true?
1,000%. I am someone who is not afraid to cry. I am someone who definitely, like I think emotions are very healthy. And so I will always speak my mind and tell you, what I think, even if it is difficult to do so. Of course, those are some of the hardest moments, but yeah, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think I have, my parents to thank for that. I'm, some would probably call me overly sensitive, but I just say I'm someone very much in tune with my own feelings and the willingness to express them. So yeah, I put my emotion in everything I do.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking I used to be somebody who took pride in like everything about me is an open book. I share everything with everyone. I see my online community as the same as a real life community. Everyone is my friend. And I think I'm on a little bit of a pendulum swing where when I went through some really tough personal stuff over the last couple years, I learned how important it is to have some things that are mine, that are
Right.
mine to me and my family, or mine to me personally, and how important that like distinction can be. And I think that
Right.
led me on a really important journey of boundaries and self-examination and things like that. So when I think of how I engage with the community, I think that the things that I have maintained from that mentality are that honesty is super important to me. Authenticity is super important to me. Vulnerability is super important to me. And you can have those things without necessarily having no boundaries, which I think I
Right.
maybe did before. So I like to think about how I'm engaging with the community that way. But if you're thinking of asking me questions and I'm trying to reveal things about myself, I would say I'm maybe too far on the pendulum toward like I keep myself very private right now because I'm a little gun shy. So I'm kind of trying to come back to that middle ground. And as a result, which I'm really proud of, a lot of the decisions I made, like leaving Twitch, like, moving forward in my life, were to focus more on my family and on the people
Right.
that I had left behind in Portland. So I'm spending a lot more time engaging with my family community, which luckily is giant. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of time and a lot of engagement that I can make with them.
Yeah. And I commend you with that. I've had the opportunity to kind of be with you a little bit on that journey, and I think you've done very well. And definitely have me thinking a little bit about right. So, like you said, there's some things that we kind of keep to ourselves, right? Like I'm gonna give you pictures of my cats all day, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that that like Jen and I made a kind of this agreement on early on is that by putting yourself out there, and that's really anyone who's going to stream, or in my case like esports at the time, it does kind of put like a pressure, a stress on like your family, right? And James was someone who I would game with a lot. So I remember it like it was yesterday, that moment where Jen's like, you know what? We already have two people who are kind of like, do on camera, doing the streaming, whatever. The whole family doesn't need to be, because I would always be like, Jen, why won't you like come on stream with me? Come on and play. And for the longest time, I actually was not angry, but like bummed, right? I was kind of bummed because like I would see other people like doing things with their significant others. But at the end of the day, it actually goes to show, how much Jen cares about like protecting the family unit as well. And I've had some interesting moments over the course of my career where, safety came into question, and that always helped, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can take whatever comes from the outside, because Jen is the one who like internally is like the shield bouncing it all
Mm-hmm.
away. And, but anyway, I that what you said resonates with me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We only have about 10 minutes till we want to start answering our first question.
Great.
But most of the stuff that we have talked about is kind of the heavier, emotional, like self-being kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'm thinking of your show Fanboys, and how a large part of what made that so fun is knowing what things you're excited about and a fan of. And, you know, you may
Yes.
be asking us questions like, how do I stay mentally healthy and engaged with my family? Or you may be asking, like, what book should I read next, or something like that. Like, anything is fair game on this show. So Marcus, what are some of your biggest fandoms and things that get you excited in terms of, like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking pop culture, but I guess there are other fandoms that could be, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, totally. I mean, so obviously, if I'm just gonna encapsulate video games as a fandom, right? In some ways, that includes streaming, right? I love to make shows. I love to do talk shows specifically. But in terms of like pop culture fandom, comic books are a huge love of mine. There was that moment in life where I just kind of was like, I'm going to stop reading and just started picking up more comic books. I've now started reading again because my other big fandom is high fantasy, specifically the Stormlight Archive and Brandon Sanderson. But you know, other things that I'm really passionate about is pinball. I love movies and television shows, and Anna has always complimented me and said, you know, like, I don't know how Marcus consumes as much as he does,
I don't.
but I love it. I also love actually something that you mentioned and was kind of the foundation of Fanboys is the I like this. What else would I like? Right. And I think that's always been an easy way that I've discovered new things is like talking to a friend and we're like, yeah, I did. Oh, well, if you love that, you should check out these 5 things. And, you know, so in terms of like other things that I love, I mean, this is going to sound weird, Anna, but I kind of brought it up earlier. Remember how I told you when I worked on that help desk that I loved closing tickets, right? I loved figuring stuff out. So, like, problem solving is one of my favorite things to do in the world. And it doesn't matter if it's an IT problem or why the pinball isn't turning on or, you know, why is this ceiling linking over here? You know, like even if I don't know anything, the quest for knowledge and the quest for an answer is something that I am just so I love and I'm passionate about. So whether that's production or tech or whatever, and I apply that again to a lot of my other fandoms. And obviously streaming, right? Like for me, especially in 2020, I feel like I've been able to connect with a new type of audience. I've been doing nothing but shows really around COVID. And over the summer, I did a lot of really exciting shows with my son where we kind of got to look at a perspective of like, here is this growing 15-year-old brain. How do they look at things like racial inequality and the pandemic and the leadership? And I'm just very passionate about, you know, having those types of conversations and sharing those with people. What about you?
Well, in terms of like my major fandoms, huge Star Wars fan.
Yes.
And before you start commenting, here's where I stand. The first 3 Star Wars movies, I watched them when I was like 8 for the first time. I thought they were the best things I'd ever seen. They were the most wonderful movies that ever existed. I continued to think that all through my childhood. And then when the new Star Wars movies came out, it was like we had been blessed by God. And walking into the movie theater was like walking into a temple, a holy place where I got to get more of the story that I loved. And that mentality has been maintained. I can talk about how certain things I may not have liked them as much as others, but like the baseline for me is all Star Wars is wonderful and valuable, and I will explain to you why it's fine. If you try to tell me that something is wrong with it and it's bad, I will explain to you why it's not bad. And I know that that is not a balanced perspective, and I am okay with that. That is my Star Wars fandom. There you go. Also a big fantasy fan like Marcus. My biggest fantasy foray right now is probably in Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games. I am super passionate about that, and I specifically like the intersection of that with improv, role-playing, acting, voice acting,
Yeah.
singing, all of the performing art that combines that as a game. I think that's why I love it so much, because I would say I'm a fan of performing arts. I was a dancer, I was a singer. I miss doing those things a ton. I was an actor. And I think that also speaks to my fandom of film and TV. I just really like visual
Yeah.
video storytelling or stage storytelling. I like that a lot. I think
By the way, can I just
dogs.
mention, because you did before you say dogs, which I figured you were going to say, but the one thing that we never got to do, that actually the reason I was always so excited to do it, because Anna and Britt were always so excited, but like a Twitch musical.
Mhm.
We talked about it
That's
many
the
times
dream.
in studios, but so, and then dogs.
I mean, going anywhere before saying dogs, like I love dogs. Every dog you see will be like a to me. And they're wonderful. I could talk about that forever. Marcus is more of a cat
I'm
person, so you get a
cats.
balanced perspective
Oh,
between us.
absolutely. And
Um,
balanced as in like or cats are the best, and
yeah, and I would
dogs are
say
the
another big
second
fandom
best.
we share is also Disney. Both
Yeah.
of us really enjoy Disney and similar musicals. And Hamilton is a great example of that. Marcus and I will both geek out about Hamilton with you. And I'm sure there's plenty more, but just to give you a baseline,
Yep.
that would be my
About
fandoms.
things.
We
And
only have a few more minutes. Is
okay.
there anything about us that people would need to know in order to know what to ask
No,
us?
you know
I
what?
guess.
I guess I would use this moment to say, we're open books. So, right, like maybe we didn't mention something that fits in line, but as Anna mentioned, and sort of what some of the things that she did and what I mentioned, I'm always willing to learn a little bit more about something that someone might have a question on, to understanding that will let you know about that. But if you didn't hear about it here, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily ask to brainstorm about anything. I mean, that's what's so great of brainstorming, is that sometimes you get a fresh perspective. And that's been some of my favorite things. A lot of times, especially for people in the industry, they'll say, hey, I'm building a product, I would love for you to look at this, or I'm trying to name a show. That's actually one of the other things I'm super
Mm-hmm.
passionate
Yeah,
about. I
you are.
love to name shows. I am actually probably like uh, uh, a monster in that regard. I will tell you if I do not like your name and why I don't like it. But yeah, if you ever need to name a show, let us know. I'm here
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
We'll brainstorm that
Yeah.
for you. And I guess with the last couple minutes, I did want to say something that's really important for us that we want to always put out there, always recognize, and always have this as an asterisk to everything we say. We can only speak from our own perspective. And for both of us, that perspective we recognize has been very privileged in many ways. So the cultural background that we come from is colored by
Right.
those things. So we will always try to note that when we're speaking, but we want that to be an overarching idea that everyone knows that we recognize we are speaking from a perspective that is limited to our own experience, that we will continue to try to expand, but that limits us in certain ways. And it's
Right.
really important to us to recognize that, especially in the era of the Black Lives Matter movement, which we both feel very passionately about supporting. So that is something that we wanted to make sure we communicate to you, and that we come very vulnerably and say,
Yes.
we're probably going to make some mistakes, and we love hearing when we do, so we can grow.
100%. And I mean, the only other thing I would add is that when we started talking about, again, in brainstorming world, step one is that you live in imagination land, and like, what are all the possibilities and all the things that you can possibly do. So, in the future of Extra Brains, I think as we work together as like a show and a community too, bringing experts on that might be able to really drill down into being an expert on a certain
Mm-hmm.
topic is something that we're interested in doing, and we'll be exploring that in the future of the show as well. So Great. Are you ready to talk a
Yes.
little bit about this week's question? Someone also asked, how long is this show? Do you want
That's
to
a
tell
good
them?
question. 90 minutes is what we're aiming toward, but neither of us have anything after this. So
Yeah, we
we'll
wanted to.
try to keep it 90 minutes. Also, Britt is producing and she will try to keep us on track for 90
Yes,
minutes.
yes,
So
yes.
90 minutes. And also, I saw some people asking, like, we're enjoying this, but what is the aim of this show? So to recap, just in case you joined us later, the aim is for us to lend our brain power, all of our experiences to any topic or question that you have. And what would happen right now, normally, if this weren't the first episode, would be that we would look at a submitted question, and we have a submission form that you can use to submit questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that by typing the command submission in our chats, !submission. There's a link there to a submission form. And those will be our kind of long form discussion questions where Marcus and I will look at it beforehand. We'll try to think about it a little bit beforehand and then present more of a long form answer to you. And that would be like the question we're about to do right now. And then closer to the end of the show, we'll also have a kind of short form answer segment where you can submit questions via chat, and Britt will pull out ones for us to answer for about 15 minutes. So we don't have any submitted questions, but we feel like this is a question that we have been asking. People have been asking us. So we're going to focus on this one for about 20 minutes, I think.
Great. Yeah, and we'll talk. I think once we get to the open Q&A a little bit more about some of the things to submit. Right, like I really do hope that people get that the aim is like we'll kick around anything. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let us use our brains, or let you use the brains to the most of our capacity. So let's talk about our first question. So this week's question, and I've gotten this a lot, obviously, especially with someone who has a 15-year-old son who is not attending school too. This one comes up a lot from family. How are you keeping up with your mental wellness during the pandemic? And before we kind of jump into it, we want to recognize that, Twitch especially is a global audience, right? We've got people who watch from the US, who watch from Europe, who watch from Southeast Asia, LATAM, etc. And everyone is kind of experiencing something a little bit different. In some countries, you have like a complete lockdown. People aren't leaving their house, so you can visit like one person every certain number of days. In others, there's mandates, or there might be directives. And then, in the United States, we just got word that like Chicago is going to go into its first 30-day lockdown. There might be others. And there's something, Anna, called pandemic fatigue. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not much different than, say, if you've ever worked a job and just felt like, I've got burnout from my job, right? So the first thing that I would kind of like throw out there, and I'd love to hear what you think, is that, sometimes you do need to escape or take a break in the same way, right? If you're looking at the pandemic from a fatigue perspective, and you look at like if you work a year long without taking any breaks or any vacation, you're going to feel the fatigue from that job and taking a
Mm-hmm.
break. So then the question becomes, Anna, how do you take a break during the pandemic? You can't necessarily go out and pretend like it doesn't exist. However,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there's some unique ways that you can kind of step back from everything that's going on. And that would be kind of my first topic that I would talk about, is that, everything right now is so driven by the news. It's driven by
Mm-hmm.
the media. And I'm very thankful that we have things like Twitch, or I can open up a new book, or, like I've been drawing and doodling a lot just to take myself away from that stuff. Because early on, especially, Anna, I was very heavily involved with the news. I'm sure many were, say, during the election as well. And so I really had to make these conscious sort of signs to myself, like, Marcus, you can turn the television off. Like, literally, you're going to turn it on 3 hours later. Probably not that much has changed, but keep in mind, and I have to remind myself this too, keep in mind that the job of CNN or ABC News or MSNBC or Fox News, their job is to keep you watching. And this is where media thrives. So while I think stay informed, it's really important, be very aware of how much fatigue that can add on. So it's like the first thing I want to mention is that, like, we'll talk about some other things, but a lot of times that bombardment of information can be what leads to a lot of, anxiety, a lot of stress. And we do have the ability to block that.
I would lump social media in some ways with the news in that
Yeah.
same realm, because I find myself getting stuck in the scrolling, in the reading, in the news watching, in a similar way on both. There's more to say about social media, but when we're talking about like being overwhelmed and inundated with information and with fear and with disappointment and all of those things, one of the best pieces of advice I actually got was from Britt, our producer, Cheerhex, because she was saying the best thing you can do is check with yourself over and over, what is the purpose of what I'm doing right now?
Right.
So I'll be scrolling social media and be like, okay, what's the purpose of this? Am I checking in with my friends to see how they're doing? Am I looking for what the trending topics are because I want to know whether to engage with them as a content creator? Or am I literally just like trying to distract my brain and actually being destructive because these things are not going to help me feel better? Or the same thing with the news. Am I looking for actual information on how me and my family should keep ourselves safe during COVID? Am I looking for information about a candidate I should vote for? Or am I just reading the news, looking for good news and knowing that it's not going to come? Those kinds of things have been really, really helpful for me to just have that, like, I find myself doom scrolling and then asking, what is my purpose? And then deciding whether that purpose is good enough. That has been a really, really big help for me.
Yeah. And I mean, the interesting thing about the pandemic and how that relates to mental wellness is like, you can't necessarily get together with your friends. However, in this connected world, we can hop on Zoom, we can hop on Jitsi, we can do whatever. But at the same time, the thing that connects us is often the thing that can distract us a lot or can cause more stress and anxiety. So there is certainly a balance as far as that's concerned. Now, that's sort of the information part of it. But I think we all have been, like very anxiety stress. I was checking out in your chat. I saw bubble baths are everything, art and music. And what I see there, Anna, is these things that bring you joy and that like kind of calm you down, and in some cases can be very relaxing. I mentioned that I was doodling a lot, and I'm very very excited about that, just because it's something to kind of take away from everything else. One thing that I have absolutely enjoyed, and not that we didn't do it a ton before, but we've still made a really big effort, and actually I give all the credit to Jen, because family dinner is important. And some nights we have what we call scroungy night, which means that you eat leftovers or whatever. But it is still
That's
important to, and this is if you're in a family or you have a significant other, it is a moment. It's a bubble of normalcy, if that makes sense, Anna. Is like in that moment, I'm, with these people who are very important to me. And we share a meal, we can talk about it, even though we might be talking about some of the things that are stressing us out. It's a great time to do that. Now, I also know that there's a lot of people, and I've talked with quite a few of them on my show and just personally, that don't necessarily have a family, a significant other. Maybe they are quarantined away from their significant other and they haven't been able to. And I do think that is much harder. And I'm always asking them, like, what are you doing? And a lot of them do say making sure they're having those same types of experiences that are like at this time or on this schedule, but maybe they are doing it virtually, or maybe they're doing it in a very safe way if they can do that as well. I do think establishing almost, I don't want to say a routine, because I don't think it's necessarily a routine, but a habit of finding an activity like that can kind of put you in a safe place, let you be protected from the everything going on, and benefit your mental wellness with a meal, a conversation, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a couple parts to how I would want to talk about that, because I think it's so important for us to recognize the amount of fatigue we are experiencing socially. Humans are social creatures. Evolutionarily, we are programmed that we know we are safer and healthier if we can be with more humans. Like, it will protect us from the bears, that kind of feeling. And so recognizing that we are going to feel that stress, we're going to feel that tension, we're going to feel like our survival depends on being around other people. That's normal and it's okay. And we have to fight it, because it's going to end someday, but it's not the right time for us to give in and say, okay, I've been inside long enough. I need to go out to a restaurant, or I need to go to a party. I mean, those kinds of things are just, they're not going to help you. And they're specifically also probably, if we're talking to a younger audience who's probably fairly healthy, they're not going to help the people who are more immunocompromised. So I think that's important to mention when you're talking about fatigue and isolation and all of that. Like, it sucks. And I guess that leads me to my second point, which is something that I felt like I really had to learn over the first 4 months of quarantine. Let's talk about it that way. I felt like, oh, wow, I'm at home and I'm supposed to be doing all these things. Like, I quit my full-time job. So now it's time for me to start writing poetry again and learning piano again. And I should be streaming every day, because what else do I have to do? And I should be doing all these things. And actually, I'm going to link this video that I love that kind of addresses this feeling. It's called Quarantine Panic Attack by Julie Nolke. And there's this part where I won't spoil it, but basically it points out, like, it's a pandemic. Like, it is scary and it's big and it's not normal. Like, this is not a normal time. You are not going to be able to act normal. You're not going to be able to be at your best. And so learning to just be nice to myself, like, literally just be like, it's okay, sweetie. Like, it's okay if you just drank enough water today and that was your biggest accomplishment. Like, that's okay. It'll be better tomorrow, maybe. I think,
I'm gonna have to watch it.
And I think also, I'm sure most people have heard this advice, but learning to speak to yourself as you would speak to a friend is so important right now. It sounds really like snowflakey and mamby-pamby, but it's a survival thing right now. Like, you have to be nice to yourself, especially if you're the only person you get to hang out with.
The other really important thing that, like, everyone should, just also think about is that this is such a unique thing because we're all experiencing it at the same time, right? And whether you are in Nebraska or you are in Italy, touring Italy, or whether you are, in, well, I mean, there's a few that are doing pretty well, but generally a lot of people in our connected circles, both online and obviously, are kind of dealing with it. And right, what better way to get at least some comfort in being able to share some of those experiences and have those conversations with people who can, like, everyone can relate with these problems that we're having. I do want to mention something that I have to give my wife credit for, because we've been looking for, like, believe it or not, sort of home improvement or like environment improvement has been something that we've all kind of tried to work on in terms of our mental wellness. My wife really got into growing indoors, like growing vegetables indoors. And eventually she got so into it that she gave me my own aero garden to grow. And I'm growing flowers here, which I would pick a couple for you and show you. Maybe I'll do that for the end of the show. But Anna, I can't explain how much, like, joy and just how much more it adds to I like being here in my room. Another thing that we did that was so simple that just, like, made such a huge impact is we put bird feeders out in our backyard, and just like in a rough day at work, when the news was at its worst, sitting outside and just watching the birds, amazing, right?
I
Just
did those
like
same two things.
it is a 10-minute, and people might say, well, that sounds really weird, but there is right, like it is the way to block out a lot of what is happening, and to just kind of let yourself enjoy that moment. And to be honest, like, it's been great for me, Anna, because I'm such a like, but I can do 10,000 things on my computer all the time, and I'm traveling here and doing that. And it's this moment where I will walk away from this pandemic saying, just stop. It's all going to be there. It's going to, take it and enjoy the moment, and and like, be happy with that. And that has helped me out a lot. Like, I never thought cleaning my garage would bring me so much joy and help my mental wellness. Again, and I did it with Jen. So that's always nice too. It's like, we accomplished something together, high five, and it feels good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to, we've talked a lot about the kind of like overarching ideas, but I want to give some concrete, like, here are some things I actually did that I can link you to that helped me, that might help you. And planting a plant was something I did. I'm trying to look for things that I can do for free, because one of my challenges in pandemic was that it's really easy for me to shop for things that feel like they would make me feel better. And most of us are not in a position in pandemic where money is just flowing in.
Yeah.
So for me, I actually used a yogurt tub to plant and propagate a rosemary sprig that I got from another friend. So instead of like buying a plant or things, she actually gave me a clipping. I learned how to propagate a clipping of rosemary, and I planted it. And that was so fulfilling, because it was like, I created life. I brought life. And I bought potting soil, but that was the only thing that I bought for that endeavor. And that was really helpful. Same thing with a hummingbird feeder and a birdseed feeder. I made it out of a milk carton. It was really fun. I have that on my Instagram. Some people asked for like how to do it. It was really great. Some other things, I think also controlling our environment right now is so helpful. So just deciding to rearrange the furniture in a room can really give you the sense of like, I'm in control of something and my room is fresh, and now I feel like I'm in a new place. I highly recommend that. It's really easy for everyone to say you should get some exercise during pandemic. That will make you feel better. Everyone talks about how exercise is going to make you feel better. And the last thing you want to do when you're depressed, lonely, feeling tired is exercise. So I feel you. And one thing that I found really helpful is doing yoga from free videos, because there's just tons. And one of the best that I did was Yoga with Adriene, which I know tons of people have heard of, but she does like 30-day yoga practices that are really, really short. So they're not hard. You won't have to spend tons of time doing them, but they give you the sense of having accomplished something, give you a moment to think and center yourself, and then also are really good for your body. And they kind of have a slow build to help you feel like you can accomplish it and it's not too hard. So I linked that in my chat. Yoga with Adriene was really good for me. You can also just Google like yoga for relaxation, yoga for sore back, whatever you want. And then when we're talking about mental health, the one thing that all of us are going to recommend is see a professional, see a therapist. We all see therapists. We think it's great. We think it's really helpful. It's wonderful. But there can be a big barrier there because it can cost a lot. It can be really hard to find a therapist. Therapists are in short supply right now because everyone needs one right now. So there are some really good kind of therapy apps that I've found. My favorite is called Sanvello. It's free. There is a paid version of it, but even the free one I find really helpful. It asks you to just kind of check in with your mood every day. It offers you some guided meditations. It offers some journaling and some tips and tricks about like how to manage certain common emotions and things. And it reminds you every morning, like it sends you a little notification that's like, how are you doing? And just asks you that question.
Yeah.
So those are my 4. Control your environment, make something grow or take care of something, take care of your mental health with a free app, and move your body in a way that is fulfilling and doesn't make you feel bad about yourself.
I think those are all great. The one thing that I'm very like thankful that obviously I have my wife and my son and my cats, and trust me, I like give them all the hugs and kisses. But not having all of that, if you ever met me, I'm a hugger. And Anna, like, it's just something that's been one of the hardest the hardest parts. I mean, like obviously having a cat and grabbing and squeezing, or Jen is, and even James and I have embraced a few times over the the 2020 year, just because it's been a little crazy. But I don't necessarily have any suggestion in that, but it's something that I dearly miss. And what I do say, because I know many others, miss it as well, is that when this is all over, we're going to have a greater appreciation for all of those moments that we spend together, whether they are short or whether they are long. And I really do look forward to that, because that's been one of like the hardest parts overall, is like, the people that I love and are closest with happen to be in my house, but all of the, friends that are online, that, or my own family that isn't here, my mom, my dad, my brothers. Anyway, I look forward to those moments.
Well, this is the time we had set aside to go to our open Q&A. So if you'd like to submit a question for Britt to grab, we won't have time to hit all of them. I apologize in advance. Thank you for everyone in advance who's going to submit a question. All you need to do is type bracket, capital Q bracket for question, and then type your question, and that will mark it for Britt that you are asking a question. I'll put bracket Q bracket in my chat so you know what I'm saying.
I will do to that too.
Bracket Q bracket question. Sorry, Britt, that will spam you with my question. But if you have a question, go ahead and submit it. We're going to take a few seconds for everyone to think about their questions, put everything out there that you want. But Marcus, is there any kind of last thoughts that you wanted to say on our how do you manage your mental wellness during the pandemic?
I'm going to have to lean on the wonderful words of Dr. Joanne Schaefer that joins me on Friday mornings on my channel, when we talk about COVID. And she's said since the very beginning, since about April when she's joined us, she said, we really have to get in the mindset that we're running a marathon and not a sprint. And I cannot tell you how many times a week I will hear myself, basically saying that to myself, is that this is something with, news constantly developing, vaccines coming out soon. But there's still going to be, change for a while. And we have to remember that, as much as we want it to be a sprint, it's going to be a marathon. And what she always says, and I love that too, is that like completing the 100-meter dash is amazing and it feels great and it's like over in a second. But imagine when we complete the marathon, it will be like we'll be throwing parades for each other and our cities and doctors and all that stuff. So just remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we do need these practices. We do need to be thinking about like the 4 mindful things that Anna talked about, or doing something that might bring us joy, or reaching out to that individual, even to check on them, even if you don't necessarily need the help, but maybe they might. It is important that we pace ourselves in all of this and keep that in mind, because as much as we want it to be done tomorrow, we've still got a little ways to go.
I would cap that off with advice you gave me at the very beginning that I've been referring back to whenever I feel like, should I or shouldn't I do this thing? Which is, I would rather feel embarrassed that I was way too careful than regret that I was not careful enough. And that has been a really guiding principle for me. So I recommend Marcus's advice to everyone else.
There we go.
There's our first question. Go ahead, Marcus.
Great. The pandemic is destroying career. This is from Tyrant LeBlanc. The pandemic is destroying career prospects for college graduates. How should one stay positive knowing he or she is graduating with debt into a horrible job market?
That's a really good question.
That is a really, really good question. So how should one stay positive knowing that, here's one way that I would say I would stay positive, is that there is a unique thing that's happening in the job market as a result of the pandemic. And that is a lot of companies are discovering that, wow, we really can function working from home. And so what is actually happening in this is that there are a lot of companies that are opening up their opportunities. And I'll use like San Francisco as an example, because there's a lot of people that would love to work for a company like Twitter or LinkedIn or Tesla or one of these like tech companies. And because these companies are now working from home, they are opening up their, jobs to wherever you might live. And this offers some really interesting opportunities, because you could be an engineer a graduating engineer in Florida and be working for a company on the West Coast. Now, time zones come with some issues, so I'm going to warn you about that. But I would say a positive and staying positive, a silver lining of it, if I could, is that the job markets are kind of adjusting in that way. And that although it's rough, and maybe you have a job career in which that doesn't necessarily happen, and I understand that too. But I think it's going to open up new opportunities as we continue to go through the pandemic and future. So I would open up one's horizons in terms of like getting a job that you're going to go into the office for. Might not happen till later, but there might be more opportunities out there. And I would use that at positive to kind of look at what might be available.
I'm looking at horrible job market, and I'm thinking about advice I give people who are going into interviews and need confidence. I think one thing that might help you stay positive is if you can feel like, you know what, I know that there's something special about me and my value offering that will impress people enough that I will succeed in this job market. So one thing that might be helpful for you to do, both in interviewing in general and also in feeling excited and positive about a job market, is sitting down and asking yourself questions. And I recommend writing them down so you can reread them and look at what stands out. But asking yourself questions like, what would my friends say about me? What do I think I offer even more than anybody else? What am I really, really good at? What is my competitive advantage?
Yeah.
And write all those things down, and then see if a word or two repeats itself over and over. Because if you can walk in and say, hi, I am so-and-so, I'm really, really good at these things, and if you hire me, you will get these things, then that's going to make you very successful in an interview. And even if you don't get the job, it will leave you with this feeling of, I know I have something awesome to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And experience going through that, right? Because as a new graduate, interviewing is a skill that you get better at over time. And so it might be an opportunity. Shoot for that remote job that's from Disney, or that remote job from a firm that is somewhere maybe not where you live. It could give some great experience. Good question. Here's another one that just came up. Do you want to? I think we could actually use extra brains as a great example of like,
Sure.
do you want to you want to read the question?
The question is from Megaria or Megarla. I can't read it from my
Megaria,
end.
yeah.
Megaria. The best way you've found to get started on things. It's always been hard, but the mental health and being at home 24/7 has made it so much harder. I identify with that so much. I call it getting couched up.
Yes. Yeah.
I get couched up. If I sit in this one place, I will not get up. I know I won't be able to do anything.
Yes.
My best technique has been A, avoiding that spot, but B, I make deals with myself. Like if I don't want to exercise, I'll say, okay, I'm going to put my gym clothes on and I'm going to get my yoga mat out and I'm going to stand on it. And if I still don't feel like doing it once I've done that, I don't have to do it. And then usually I feel like doing it once I've gotten to that point, but it gives me this feeling of like, I can escape. If I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it, but I have to do just the first step. Or I don't want to clean my room, so I'm going to clean for 10 minutes. And if after 10 minutes I want to stop, I'm allowed to stop. That usually helps me, because momentum is a huge driving force for me just to get started on something. What do you think, Marcus?
I have so many different strategies and thoughts. I'm going to try to spit them out. I've like started this one recently. And it is inspired by Shia LaBeouf, his video where he's like, just do it. Just do it. Do you know how good it feels to like motivate yourself in that way? So like there's been a couple of projects where I have literally gotten up and walked over here and like the empty, and I've just been like, Wheat, come on. You know, you're going to hate writing this, but once you get started, you're going to be so happy. And I've literally just gotten myself into like, I'm going to hype myself up. Now that is kind of for like the silly, dumb things that I just like know I need to get done. But I do relate with this as well. And I one thing I want to say is because when this whole thing started, like Anna pointed out, I thought, man, I'm going to have all the time in the world, right? And that actually can do some weird things to your brain in terms of like, I can do it next week because I still have all the time in the world. So, I'm gonna mention this book a couple times. There is a book called Eat That Frog. And if you ever want an insight to how your brain deals with procrastination, it's a great little book. It's a short read. And the idea is pretty simple, is that like if you woke up every day and the first thing that you had to do was eat a frog that was right next to on your nightstand and you had to eat it, that would probably be the worst thing that you do all day. But you did it and everything else would be so easy. So it talks about how to like kind of train your brain in terms of procrastination. That doesn't suggest that you should eat frogs. What it's suggesting is like sometimes if you tackle the most difficult thing that you've got ahead of you as the first thing of the day, then it makes everything else seem so easy and you already start the day feeling very accomplished. So one thing, make a checklist. It might seem very, very elementary, but it's true. If you make a checklist and you're constantly looking at it and you're checking it off and you're crossing it out, it feels good to cross those things out. If there's
or give yourself stickers. That's what I would do. Give yourself rewards.
If there's 3 things left, just move them to the next day, right? The sky didn't fall, nothing happened bad, no one got hurt. But I wanted to relate it back to Extra Brains because we started working on the show back in May. And our original plan was that, you know what? This is great. We're gonna probably start in like June or July. And well, obviously we missed that by a long time. And in a lot of cases, that can actually kind of feel bad. But it was amazing to be able to say, we want this to be good. We can't control everything with this project, and we had a deadline, but we were open to moving it and open for it to be flexible. And I've found that that's helped me a lot, is that I've kind of like taken away restrictions on my deadline. I've said, I'd like to do this by this time, or I need to get this done today. But you know what? If we don't, we'll figure out when the next deadline that we can hit. So those are sort of the 3 things. I love the personal pep talk. Kind of been doing that a little bit more. I've never done that before this year, but it's worked. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. Let's try to fit one more.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marcus.
What sort of news gets you? Oh, this is from Anxioneth. Did I say that? Anxioneth? Anxioneth?
That's right to me.
What sort of news gets you in the mood of hope in humanity is restored? Wow. That is a great question. It might be a little different, but because we're in a pandemic, I definitely am going to, talk a little bit from that perspective. I think some of the hope in humanity restored for me has been in, a lot of the reports on how people are trying to do things in the pandemic in a unique way. Like for example, I watched this video on a woman who did have a very popular like fitness center, and she went to and changed everything over and did it technology, and then like through that she actually started up classes that were free that people could sign up for, because she realized that some of the people that she was working with in her fitness center, like they had lost their jobs too. And there's a lot of incredible news items and stories about how people are really helping others in this pandemic that we're in. And maybe that is from a support perspective. Maybe that's from a monetary perspective. Maybe it is just from I do miss going to the gym, so it's something that I can do. Those are probably some of the stories that or the types of news that gets me in the mood of hope and humanity restored. Also, for some reason, I'm a really big fan of when humans save animals videos, and every single time I see it, what was the one I saw recently, like a raccoon that sort of got tangled up in like a net cover, and this guy like stopped and he, did I don't know. I see that and I'm like, there's so much goodness, and yes, he's sharing it with the raccoon, but he's going to go share it with humans as well. And those are the two news.
I was going to say that one, but I sometimes find that one difficult for me because in order to get the like animal had to be saved, there's usually a bad human behind why the animal had to be saved. Like we spilled something in their habitat, we cut down a tree,
That is true.
we abandoned that
Yeah.
dog. So that one's tough for me. But volunteerism and doing things just for the sake of doing things, like I look for volunteer news, which is similar to that. It's in that same vein. I also think science news has been a really good help for me, where sometimes it will just be at least away from what's going on Earth. Like it might be about exploration of space and what we're learning outside of even our planet. Or what's especially good is when I can find technology that is specifically catered to helping solve some of the problems that we have right now, connecting people, taking care of our climate, those kinds of things. Scientific responses to those are definitely a hope and humanity restored thing. And then finally, I would say news about kids or young people who are making big waves. Like I am a huge fan of Greta Thunberg and watching what she does, and the fact that she at her age is making such big waves and speaking to such important people. Even if you can't say like she has changed this, she has at least made a huge impact, and that makes me hopeful for humanity too when young people are doing that kind of stuff. Those are my three. But
Love
now
it.
we're at almost an hour and a half, almost 90 minutes. So we won't be able to take any more questions from chat right now, but we did want to go over how you can submit for the future and what the shows will look like in the future. Marcus?
Yeah, so you can do !submission, and it will, in either of our channels, it will bring up a link to a Google form. Now, I love the Q&A part because I think a lot of it will stem from the sort of the things that we talked about. But if you do take a look at the submission, you're going to find that we obviously we can't brainstorm every question. We're going to try, but we do want you to submit, and we hope that you can write something that's clear, concise, direct. Please keep it, PG-13. We may edit it right for out of profanity and whatever. But we wanted to give more opportunity to elaborate, right? So, for example, we were talking earlier about careers, right? And we got a question about jobs, which is really good. But maybe you'd want to apply some additional, context to that question, right? So we give you the opportunity via the submission form, and then we'll review these throughout the week, and then we'll pick probably more than one because we're not going to introduce ourselves for 40 minutes every single show.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to actually focus on the questions that you submit. Some of them will be themed together. Some of them might be completely different. But the submission form is the sort of out of chat, let you think about it. Maybe there's a big problem that, maybe you do want to start a show and you're like, well, shoot, they talked about creative storytelling and naming a show. I'm going to tell them about my idea and we can talk about it. It could be anything. The form will let you kind of elaborate a little bit more in that regards. And we're still going to obviously always accept the end of show Q&A where we can kind of do a little bit more rapid fire or in relation to some of the things that we've talked about. Did I miss anything?
Well, I was also going to say I've seen some questions, people asking where they could find the show later, or I'm hoping if you're asking about a recording of the show that maybe you want to share it with somebody. Maybe you have somebody who has asked a similar question of you and you'd like to share a clip from the show. Anything that you'd like to do, that would be great. We would love for more people to come hang out with us and ask even more questions. So the VODs of this show for now will just live on Marcus and my Twitch channels. So you can also watch the chat along with them. In the future, we may try to put the recordings somewhere else, but we don't have plans to do that right now. We're just trying to get the show off the road.
Yeah.
Get the show on the road. You know what I mean? Whatever metaphor that is. And then we'll see in the future. But let us know if you want to see it in a particular form. We can't promise it'll happen soon, but we love to hear your feedback. So, and also, I mean, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you have feedback on the show, please feel free to tell us. And if you liked it, please share it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I want to thank everyone who has, joined us here today for our first episode. There's been a lot of work that has gone on behind the scenes, and it's really exciting to finally get it off the ground.
That's what it was.
Get it off the ground.
Show on the road and show off the ground.
Both brains
both of those
were needed to get to there.
Yeah.
But we will be airing every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Do want to remind you, obviously, we have some holidays coming up. So, throughout the next couple of weeks, we'll let you know if it's going to be on a different day or if we just won't have a show. But I think once we, kind of get into 2021, you can expect it every Friday. It's going to be great to get together with the communities again. I really actually loved being able to watch some of the different chat from both of the channels. So it's very cool. And we're excited to continue to iterate on this show and improve it based off of your feedback and some of the questions that we get. But I guess the last thing is just I'd urge anyone, looking forward to seeing what types of things we might be able to help you tackle in your life, whether it is school or career or family or life or relationship or streaming or whatever. We hope that Extra Brains will be a resource at some time and another, or maybe you find some insight or direction that you enjoy that someone else prompted. So.
Really quick, Marcus, where can people find you throughout the rest of the week? If you're going to be on stream or social media, where can they look for you?
Yes, so you can find me, as always, on Twitter at djWHEAT. My 2 official shows now are both on Fridays. So in the morning, I do a show on COVID-19 where we have an expert, Dr. Joanne. We've had contact tracers on before. I kind of yell for an hour, and then Dr. Joanne joins us, and then we open up the phones in the third hour. And then, of course, now we've got we're adding Extra Brains to the lineup as well. So I will always be live on Friday. Otherwise, I'm usually live in the mornings if I do stream, and my Twitter will always let you know about that. What about you, Anna?
This evening, I will be on twitch.tv/pennyarcade playing Among Us with some of the C-Team folks. So if you want to have a little Friday the 13th spooky Among Us stream, come join us there at Penny Arcade. Monday, I'll have Echoes of Eternity, which is a Star Wars role-playing game, and that will be on my channel. Then Tuesday, I believe, this hasn't been announced, but I'm pretty sure that the premiere of Season 2 of Knights of Evening Star, which is a D&D live gameplay show on the official D&D channel, will premiere Season 2, and that will be on D&D or twitch.tv/D&D.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then we'll have Extra Brains again next week on Friday. And those are my only streams planned. Who knows? I'm being kind to myself and letting myself not make promises I can't keep. Who knows if I'll stream otherwise? But those are the ones I have planned.
Awesome. Well, you can follow both of our channels and on Twitter also. Again, thank you again so much for joining us. I'm excited because I've got just a little bit left to do. New episode of Mandalorian came out tonight, so we've been going to the movies on Friday, watching an episode of Mandalorian in a movie. It's going to be pretty good. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on another episode of Extra Brains. We're out of here. Peace.